Yo, checking out a Clair Obscur 6-year development cycle. I played the first act on Twitch. My Twitch account will just be linked in my channel page if y'all want to like check it out. But I got done through it. That little scene that I'm pretty sure people will know what's happening on that first act was so damn crazy. Even just thinking about it, I'm having chills right now. It is just wild how that scene just ended. I thought everything was just gonna be fine, and then I seen all that happening. Like, yeah, like even in my in that video, on my playthrough, I'm over here thinking the girl that was Sophie was the main character. I thought she was the main character, and then I see what happened, and then I'm just like, damn, that first act was just crazy. I'm already hooked on that first act alone, so I'm gonna be checking that out later. Gonna be playing through that shit too, but I'm gonna check out this 6-year cycle. Let's get it.
This is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, just 1 year into development. This footage you're seeing was made with the sole purpose
That was a
of
year
trying to
in the
find
first
voice
in
actors for the
development.
main
Yo, that looks crazy.
characters. In fact, the creator of the game would literally be posting this to Reddit in order to find voice actors for their characters. And from that same Reddit post, the creator would also find a lead writer, of which also had no experience in working in games before.
What?
In fact, her previous role was an investor at a private equity company. To top it off, the composer for the game's soundtrack had never written a game soundtrack before, and he was
So they all knew people?
brought on after the director of the game found him off of SoundCloud. And to put this into
SoundCloud?
perspective, most AAA games like Fortnite or Call of Duty are backed by hundreds of developers across dozens of
And they could barely put some mid games.
different departments. So this begs the question, how did a team that's smaller than the Call of Duty microtransaction department craft the most visually incredible and
Damn.
most impactful RPG we've seen in years?
That fucking song is a bang.
Clair obscur dans les hauts pins, tu trouveras sans elle. Clair obscur trouveras, tu
When I
trouveras
seen that,
Clair obscur dans les hauts pins, tu trouveras sans elle.
huh?
Expedition 33's journey began in late
What if I would've-
2020, but the
What if I seen this first? That would have spoiled everything. That's literally the scene I was talking about.
first concepts actually started 4 years before that.
Oh, nah, I'm
Guillaume
glad I
Broche,
seen
who was
this
the
now.
founder of Sandbox Interactive and the director of Expedition 33, was at Ubisoft for roughly 4 years.
He was
From
working at
2016 up
Ubisoft.
until 2019, he would work on games like The Division 2 and Ghost Recon Breakpoint. After those two games
What was he
shipped,
working on those games for when he had this banger in the sleep?
he was put in a narrative lead role for a game franchise called Might and Magic. And like many of you right now, I had no idea this game franchise even existed. But apparently, the franchise is a mobile game owned by Ubisoft Shanghai, and Broche was leading the narrative for this franchise. And as you would expect from leading narrative on a
Ubisoft
mobile
fumbled,
game
man.
designed to extract as much money as possible from players, Guillaume got bored with the work that he was doing on the team and really felt like there was no impact to what he was doing. And during this time, he had ambitions
said,
that went
"Fine, I'll do it
beyond being
myself,"
shoehorned
and
into a
dropped
mobile
a
gacha
banger.
game. He knew that a game like Expedition 33 would never be greenlit by Ubisoft, so he quit his job in order to
Damn.
pursue his ambition. Alongside him, Tom Guillerme had the same ambitions as the director, so he would also leave Ubisoft and join the infant team. With the
Wait, so all these people came from Ubisoft?
director writing up the narrative and Tom, who had expertise on how Unreal Engine worked, the small grassroots team would begin by exploring Unreal Engine 4. While the director was messing around with Unreal Engine, the original prototype for Clair Obscur was supposed to be related to time. So when he had to save the project on his computer, he had to find a name for the project file. So what would the project
What
be
he
called?
named it?
Well, the game's related to time, so maybe Hourglass. Well, Sans Fall in an Hourglass. Okay, Sans Fall is the working name of the game, and from that point on, the game's internal working name would be Sandfall, even to this date. with
Still?
Tom at the helm as co-founder
Oh,
and
nah, that's just a
CTO,
memory
and
right there.
Guillaume as CEO and also a co-founder. They would embark on their expedition to
I hope he ain't dropping no other spoilers on this, man.
create a brand new
Because I've only
world
seen the
by
first act and a little
themselves.
bit after the first act. Like, I already seen the part where he tried to, like, Persona 3 himself.
Now that the studio had been founded, it was time to actually build up the game. Since Guillaume wanted this game to have a big focus on narrative, he began reaching out
the
anywhere
narrative
he
on
could
that
to find people
first
who
act,
would be interested in helping the passion
I
project.
was so hooked. I was just going around talking to people. And that alone just got me more invested. And then when I seen all that happening, I'm just like, damn, I was just talking to all of them.
Evolved into something a bit more serious. He created this post on the subreddit r/record this for free, looking to cast actors for the main
What?
roles of the game, including, of course, Mayel. One of the many people who auditioned from this Reddit post was Jennifer Schvedberg-Yen. She got one of the leading roles as an actor. However, once she joined the team, it was pretty clear that her impact would be most noticed in a writer position, so she became lead writer on the game. Despite the growing teams,
Oh,
the
nah.
co-founders
He
and
knew her
Jennifer
potential,
Yen
bruh.
said that they wore many different hats.
I don't know
during
if
the
that
game's
if she did
production.
that first part. That's all I know, but that shit was a banger, bro.
Her involvement would span from story to gameplay to art and all over the project. At this point, the small team continued prototyping and development on the game, but the team started the hunt for a composer at the same time. The co-founders began their hunt for a composer
And that's where
by
they found the
reaching out to the most
one
popular composers
on
in the
SoundCloud?
industry, like Hans Zimmer, Johnny Paisano, Danny Elfman, and just kidding. He began his search on SoundCloud. That's where he found Lorien Testart. And at this point, Lorien had never worked on a game before, but caught the attention of the co-founders based
Damn.
off the work he's done on his SoundCloud.
A bunch of
I
new
am not
people. That's
making
what
this
he
up.
found.
The composer of
A group of
Expedition 33,
nobodies.
one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in a video game, had never worked on a video game soundtrack before.
And the fact that they dropped a banger, now everybody got their eyes on them, bro. That's what's crazy. Dang, Ubisoft really fumbled.
Oh, and actually, it wasn't SoundCloud. It was even crazier than that. One night, the director went on an obscure gaming forum with like 10 people on it, and he made a post asking if anybody would want to join his team as a composer. And out of sheer luck, Lorien Testard had also randomly found this forum for the first time, just an hour after the post was made. The hunt to expand the team wouldn't end just there.
Nah,
They would
that
also find the
is
studio's
crazy.
art director too. Nicholas Maxon Francombe would join the studio during the founders' hunt through online forums. The core development team of 6 developers would continue to work on the prototype for Expedition 33. Driven by a cohesive vision of what they wanted the game to be from the very beginning, the teams spent the majority of 2020 building out the studio
What?
first.
Is that
And then towards the end of the year,
is that a video
the game itself.
of the song?
Everyone was on the same page here and had the same goals as each other. To make
Oh,
one of the
nah,
best
that's
reimaginings of
crazy.
a classic JRPG that any
Oh yeah, hold up. And didn't Square Enix just say? Well, I mean, I don't think just say, but like, they had said that they couldn't do any more turn-based because that's what people don't want. And then you got this, man. This alone is a crazy game, bro. And it's turn-based, and they saying that you can't make any turn-based being good. Then you got this the quick time events on these is crazy, man.
anybody will ever play. By April 2021,
so
Sandfall moved
crazy
into
just
a bigger
seeing all
office, and the
this.
core development team working on Expedition 33 started to expand. The team went from 6 employees to now more than 15 working on the game,
Damn,
comprising
15?
mostly of
Wait, how many
junior-level
people
engineers
worked
who
on
didn't
this?
really have any experience
know
in
if they
making
added in
games
more.
before, but were just as ambitious as the rest of the studio. The once grassroots passion project was starting to evolve into something bigger. By mid-2021, they were putting the finishing touches on a newer, rebooted demo, something small but was polished enough to attract attention. The original version of Expedition 33 was more Victorian, but these were all assets comprised of the Unreal Engine asset store, just as a quick way to rapidly create a simple prototype. But as the studio's new art director joined, they shifted directions a bit. The demo was meant to serve as a teaser for potential investors or as a foundation for a future Kickstarter campaign. In less than a year since forming the studio, the team began presenting their work to various publishers. Though still in a prototype phase, the demo was impressive, especially given the team's limited size and resources.
Is that the one?
Towards
Is that
the end
the
of
old man that you
2021,
meet?
they would meet with a brand new publisher, Kepler Interactive. And for those who don't know Kepler Interactive, they are a small indie publisher founded in September of 2021. Kepler Interactive is co-owned by a group of independent game developers, and their primary initiative is to help fund smaller indie games like Sifu, for example, and allow
they funded a banger.
teams to have full creative freedom over their projects. Right off the bat, the publisher and the development teams hit it off and quickly inked a deal to work together in order to ship Expedition 33. Sandfall would use the extra funding rounds by Kepler to shift development from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5. Additionally, Kepler would also open the door for more popular voice actors to be brought onto the project. And of course, the small team of 12 people would grow to 22 people working on Expedition 33. Kepler Interactive and Sandfall would announce their partnership together in March of 2023. Additionally, around the same time, Microsoft would also pick up Expedition 33 as a Day 1 Game Pass launch title. At this point, the game had financial backing, guaranteed exposure through Game Pass, successfully switched over to Unreal Engine 5, and greatly expanded their tiny development team, all within a year or two, while also simultaneously working on the actual game. With their new investments coming in, they were also able to upgrade their office with a full motion capture studio. And Kepler...
Yo, so they were just doing it as they were going? Damn.
Interactive helped pull in a star-studded cast to help voice the main characters. The cast that Kepler was able to pull in is a bit wild. Gustav was played by none other than Charlie Cox, who you may know as Daredevil. Jennifer English played Mayel, who was Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3. Ben Starr played Verso, and he was also in Final Fantasy 16. Andy Serkis from, well, you know who he is. And the list just goes on and on, with even more incredible talent.
Yo, they got some banger voice actors.
Something much bigger than just a great game with excellent gameplay. It was also shaping up to become an incredible narrative experience that arguably could be up there with the best movies of all time. As a side note, on the movie side, Kepler Interactive was also able to secure a live-action film for the franchise.
They got a live action adaptation? I hope it gets done right.
It's too early to say how good that will be, but it is a fun fact. By the end of 2023, Sandfall Interactive would begin working on a debut trailer for Expedition 33. Since they had a partnership with Microsoft and were going to ship the game Day 1 on Game Pass, they also had a spot in the Xbox Game Showcase in 2024. This is where they chose to reveal their passion project turned masterpiece to the world.
Yo, I don't know if I'm gonna see some spoilers right now.
Sandfall Interactive would reveal the game to the world in June of 2024. And right off the bat, everybody was enthralled by the world that Sandfall had introduced us to. Typically, when a game spends 6 years in development, we would consider it to be stuck in development hell, or a case of too many cooks in the kitchen. However, with Sandfall Interactive and Expedition 33, a 6-year development cycle is actually a pretty remarkable turnaround. I know it sounds a bit crazy to say,
by a group
but
of
just
newbies?
looking at all of the accomplishments the studio made within the development cycle really helps highlight this point. The first 2 years involved just a couple of folks playing around in Unreal Engine to get a better feel of how the engine worked and creating a rapid prototype.
Wait, so they didn't even know how to work the engine? And they still did it. Nah, these people are talented.
Of Expedition 33, one that was a bit more Victorian and had utilized free assets from the Unreal marketplace. The next 2 years were spent growing the team, with more talent, bringing in specialized directors, and starting the process of securing a publishing deal that would help bring the game into the limelight. And the final 2 years were spent iterating upon their prototypes and creating a game with a laser-focused vision, a vision that the entire team shared unilaterally. Not only was the team being built up during their 6-year
I
development,
don't know if that's
but even their publisher was too. The CEO of Sandfall really hit it out of the park when he said something along the lines of, "You can accomplish so much when working with a smaller publisher team." Kepler and Sandfall both had double-digit employees, so the CEOs found it really easy to interface with each other. Alongside the fact that the studio had full creative control, the relationship between the two companies was solely dedicated to crafting the best game they possibly could, with no middlemen trying to squeeze money out of the players. Just 2 months later, the team would put out a 6-minute gameplay reveal. This reveal would showcase all of the work that they had done thus far during development. At this point, the gameplay they showed off looked to be almost identical to the final version we would get a couple months later, so it's safe to say the work that remained at this point was bug fixing and minor UI changes. By the end of 2024, the team had finally finished the core development of the game, and it was time to celebrate. They knew that the game would be releasing next year, and they anxiously waited fans
to get
their hands on their project. And to no surprise to anybody who's played Expedition 33, they absolutely crushed it. Not only was it a critical success with reviewers, but also gamers. Since release, the game has been in the top 10 most popular games on Steam alone. In just 12 days, the game sold over 2 million copies, and we can only imagine what the actual player count is if you factor in Game Pass. The story of this game's development is just crazy. The teams absolutely deserved their flowers in creating such a great journey with such a small team. But don't just take it from me. Here's the founder of Larian Studios, the developers of Baldur's Gate 3, predicting the success of Clair
he did say something.
33.
He said something that that he knew what games were gonna be winning, at least for this year, and then he said the next years too. Nah, that's a crazy flex.
So it turns out that not only will I be the one who will know as first which game wins tonight, I actually also know which game is going to win next year, the year after, and the year after. Now, how do I know this? Well, an oracle told me. She said, change is coming. The oracle told me that the game of the year 2025 was going to be made by a studio who found the formula to make it up here on stage. It's stupidly simple, but somehow it keeps on getting lost. Studio made their game because they wanted to make a game that they wanted to play themselves. They created it because
this alone got me just smiling.
They didn't make it to increase market share. They didn't make it to serve as a brand. They didn't have to meet arbitrary sales targets or fear being laid off if they didn't meet those targets. And furthermore, the people in charge forbade them from cramming the game with anything whose only purpose was to increase revenue and didn't serve the game design. They knew that if you put the game and the team first, the revenue will follow. They were driven by idealism and wanted players to have fun. And they realized that if the developers didn't have fun, nobody was going to have any fun. They understood the value of respect, that if they treated their developers and players well, those same developers and players would forgive them when things didn't go as planned. But above all, they cared about their game because they loved games. It's really that simple, said the oracle.
Damn. He just dropped all that and it went over probably a bunch of people's heads. Damn, it went over mine. I didn't even pick this game up until now. Shit, I gotta get more tapped in.
Clair, obscur, trouveras, tu trouveras effet. Clair, obscur, noir et au point, tu trouveras sans elle. Clair, obscur, trouveras, tu trouveras effet. Clair, obscur, noir et au point, tu trouveras sans elle.
C'est vraiment une expérience qui a été très importante pour moi. J'ai pleuré pendant 2 jours, j'ai rigolé, c'était formidable.
And the fact that he dropped something so damn crazy to be listening to, cause I so far only listened to that song, and I think it was no wait, the menu song, this one, and what was the other one? I think where you just enter the first act one. I think there was only one song. But those were just bangers to be listening to. Oh, that's it. Yo, I can't even wait to see what they're gonna be dropping next. So I don't know if it's gonna be like a DLC or something for the game, or a whole different game, or a whole new genre. But I'm gonna be looking at what they doing now. I mean, probably to everybody else too, that they already got a bunch of eyes on them. Just like the Larian Studios. Like I know I'm already tapped in to see what the hell they gonna be dropping. Cause I played the shit out of BG3 and the PS5. But damn, so it's already 2 indie studios that just did something crazy. I just want to know who's gonna be the next one. I hear just showing out all these big companies, man. And like, it's not even that hard too to like drop something that people actually just want to be playing. But like, damn, that like, I guess they just don't want to make money. Alright, peace out.